Hey everybody, I have some exciting news to share with you. Here at Rock Harbor, we are going to be hosting a prophecy conference on October 4th. It's a Saturday, and it's going to be right here in Bakersfield at Rock Harbor Church. And we're going to have a prophecy conference about the apostasy of the church. But we're not only going to talk about what's going on in a negative way in the church and how the church is losing its grip with the culture and not contending for the faith. We're going to talk about ways in which we as individual Christians can re-engage in the fight and battle through what's happening not only in the West but around the world. And so we're going to have a great cast of speakers and some top-notch guys that I have lined up, and they're going to have a one-day shot of not only exposing what's going on, but equipping us in, okay, what can I do to be salt and light? How can I go about confronting this that I see in my churches, that I see in my community, that the church is not doing and the pastors are not doing? We are having a leadership deficit. And so we hope from this conference to encourage many people at the grassroots level to take ownership and say, hey, look, will you be able to take out the truth and contend for the faith, be salt and light, because the churches are not doing it anymore. The pastors are not doing it anymore. So it comes down to our responsibility. And so that's what we're geared up for, and it's going to be great. You're going to be blessed, and you're going to walk away fully equipped to be able to handle this culture. And so hopefully mark down your calendars that hopefully you can attend in person, but if not, we'll have a live stream for anyone that can't make it, and either way, it'll be a blessing for you. So mark the date, October 4th. It's a Saturday here in Bakersfield, California at Rock Harbor Church. Hope to see you then. Okay, the next idiom we will look at then, several idioms that we'll go through. The first one tonight will be the hand of the Lord was upon somebody. And we'll see this in like Ezra. This Ezra came up from Babylon. He was skilled as a scribe in the law of Moses, which the Lord God had given him. The king granted him all his requests according to the hand of the Lord his God upon him. And you'll see that many times in passages about different people, different characters in the Bible. And it can mean a varied amount of things. It can mean direct guidance, favor, empowerment. It just pictures God's hand. And when you talk about God's hand, you're talking about God's power and his purposes on someone's life, steering the events and giving success. And so obviously with the ability of Ezra to be able to go back and rebuild Jerusalem and different parts of it, the wall particularly, God was intervening in that situation to allow the circumstances that would cause that to happen. And that's what you have to look in your life. What you're looking for God's hand upon you is not that life is easy. We've talked about that. It's like it is the idea of providence in your life. It is the idea that there's certain things that start aligning in your life that you can't explain, and that alignment is supernatural. And that's typically the providential miracles you will see in your life. You typically won't see grade A miracles. If you do, you're very fortunate to see grade A miracles. Some people do, some people don't. But the main miracle you will see in your life is providential miracles. That's God's hand working in your life, on you, opening doors, closing doors, and doing those kinds of things that guide you. And so, you might say, I landed a job and there was no way I could have landed that job, and it just kind of fell in my lap and things kind of lined up, and that's what we're talking about. Most people don't see that as the hand of God, and so they miss it. They're not seeing the supernatural. They just see it as luck, or I was in the right place at the right time, and it's unfortunate because that's what God's signpost is for people. Your history, when you look back at your history in your life, you should be able to see God working in your life to align certain things. Now, don't get me wrong. There's plenty of things that happen in our life we don't have answers for, and we have a lot of questions that we want to ask God. And your questions will be answered one day by God when you're in his presence. But what he wants you to focus in on is where you actually do see the hand of God, not what you don't understand. Satan wants you to focus on what you don't understand. He asks you to trust him on that you don't understand. But in those things you can see, how you met somebody, how things aligned, how you went to school, or how you did that, that's God's hand on you. And so all of us can look at that and say, yeah, there's no way I could have gotten here without that and that happening, and it was obviously a miracle of God. But what we see then is when you talk about God's hand or you look at it in your life, what you're seeing is God's involvement in your life. And a lot of people, I hate to say it, Christianity is really prone to teach this, that God only intervenes in your life when, there's desperation and you need him at all costs. And what's happening, though, that's kind of a form of deism, where God's just winding up the clock and he lets it run and he never gets involved. He's actually involved all the time in your life. And so we believe that he is active and he is present and he is doing things in your life constantly for things like protection, provision, all kinds of different things, obviously empowerment, those types of stuff. So for Ezra, he got divine favor from the king of Persia, and obviously that helped. Sometimes you get divine favor with your boss. Sometimes you get divine favor with a coach. Sometimes you get divine favor with somebody. And sometimes that person likes you, and you really can't figure out why they like you. They just like you. And sometimes that's God's favor coming upon you. And the person will be disposed to you to help you. And when you see that, don't just chalk it up to a human involvement. Just see behind the scenes that's God, the hand of the Lord on you. The hand of the Lord can also symbolize, obviously, judgment, but in this kind of context, you're seeing in a positive sense on his people. But the hand of the Lord also can come in judgment. But anyway, like I said, you always want to look at the hand of God. Now, this is important, especially in trying to figure out things in your current life. Sometimes, like when I'm counseling with people, they'll come to me and say they can't see God in their life at all. They look back in their past and they're focusing in on all the bad things that happened in their life, and they can't see the good things that either came out of it, or that God was there, or that God had provided this or provided that for them during the midst of all the bad stuff. They just focus on the bad stuff. And when you focus in on only the bad stuff, you will go blind to all the other things that God has done for you. And I call them the 10 P's or 11 P's. I don't know how many I have, but there's like protection, providence, provision, all these different terms. And so I'll ask people, I go, okay, let's start off in your life and let's go through it. Let's go through your history. What's your earliest memory? And sometimes it's a good memory, sometimes it's a bad memory. And so we go down through that, and even taking them through the bad stuff. And I said, even that this happened, did you see God's hand involved in that? Did you sense that he was there or whatever? And they can't. So sometimes it takes a little unpacking. And what I typically have to do, and I got this idea from Norm Wright, who's the best grief counselor on the planet. He said typically what will happen is you can't remember a lot of things. And what happens is if you start writing things down, when you're chronicling things that happen to you, it'll pull out from your memory bank where you have categorized those things and you have forgotten. And so if you'll write down the event that happened to you, maybe it was bad, once you start writing, your memory will start be re-engaged and you'll start remembering things again. And that pulls out those memories. And then while you're writing and it's on the paper, you go back and you look at the things surrounding the events to see if you can see God's power, God's presence, God's provision, God's, whatever, bringing people to your life, all that stuff. And what will happen is you'll start seeing how God loves you. Like a lot of people say, well, bad things happen to me, so, I didn't experience love. And that's actually not true, because even though you didn't get the proper love from whoever, maybe it's your parents or something like that or whatever, what you have to do is look around and you will see that God was bringing you people that actually loved you, that showed you that love. And, whether it's a coach, a teacher, a friend, or whatever. And the problem is you tend to forget that. And you just look at where you didn't get the love from and the expectation, and you miss that he was sending everyone around you to provide that extra measure of love that you lost from that. And so, like I was telling my pastors this week when I try to teach them how to counsel a little bit, I said, the problem with a lot of people is they will look at what they're lacking instead of what they have. And it's kind of like Adam and Eve in the garden. It's the idea that you could have all the trees, but you can't have that one. And what tree did they want? Well, I want that one. Yeah, but you have all the other trees. And so what ends up happening is Satan makes you look at the limitations that you have rather than you can eat of any of the trees. You have all that available to you. And then, you can, you just can't have that one. You can't have it all. And the problem is we do tend to want it all, but then we focus in on what we don't have. So, we were talking about like people's abilities. Like say you wanted to be rich and famous or whatever. You wanted to achieve this in your life, and you wanted to achieve that in your life, and stuff like that. And I'll take myself for example. I didn't plan to do this. I had a whole different plan in my life when I started, and God had a different plan, obviously, and his plan's better. But if you go through this scenario, and this is where you have to be totally honest with yourself, if I were to get exactly what I wanted, what would it actually do to me? And that's why God puts the limitation on me and puts the limitation on you. Because if I did get what I wanted, I probably wouldn't even know him. I probably wouldn't want to know him. I probably wouldn't have any relation. And that's a pretty good hunch. Because if people are given what they want, they won't have a need for God. I can pretty much guarantee I wouldn't have a need for God if I did what I wanted to do and I got what I wanted to get. And I brought in the concept of Acts chapter 17 that he puts us all in certain times and boundaries and places. Paul makes his argument at the Areopagus and says, look, the reason you live at this point in time in history and the reason you live in this place on planet Earth is so that you will know him and so that you will reach out for him and grope for him. And the idea that Paul's trying to say is God has situated everybody in their life at a certain point in history and a place in time to give them the best chance possible for knowing him. That's why you live here. That's why you don't live in the 1800s. That's why you don't live in the 1700s. This is why you live in America and you don't live in Zimbabwe. Because if he did put you over there, it would give you a less of a chance to know him. So everyone's where they're at and in time based on their ability to give them the best ability, I guess, to come to know him. That being the case, you can expand that a little bit further as far as our limitations and what we're able to accomplish in our lives. And if you look at the limitations, like I was telling the staff, I said, look, let's just pretend you wanted to be smarter than you are right now. What if God gave you 5 more points of IQ, but those 5 points would take you away from him? You get what I'm saying? So you like, well, no, do you want to be smarter and not know him? No, I don't. Okay, well, that's the problem. And so some of the answers to us of why we're limited is because you wouldn't know him. You wouldn't seek him. You wouldn't want him. If you had $1 million or you won the Powerball, which was like a 1-point-something billion dollars. What was the Powerball? Let's say you won Powerball. And I know what you're thinking. I would be a philanthropist and I would help all these ministries. No, you wouldn't. No, you wouldn't. That's a lie. And quit lying to yourself. You know you wouldn't. I wouldn't. I would just take the money and run. And I would disappear and I'd buy an island and buy a jet. And I would live on the beach every day. I know what I would do. I wouldn't be a philanthropist. I would just be gone. I'd be selfish. I would take the money and die, I guess. You know, and people think, well, no, I'd be just this awesome philanthropist. No, you wouldn't. That's not how it goes. And so you think, okay, you start looking at the other limitations you have. Those limitations are meant to keep you in a relationship to him and humble and seeking him, because if that's why. So what Satan wants you to do is focus on the limitations that you have rather than what you have, and realize that the limitations help you to know him. That's what it is. Because otherwise you wouldn't know him. And that's kind of the idea behind Acts 17. So that's where you get this idea that looking at the hand of God on your life, you may think that your life has not went according to plan. Okay? And don't get me wrong, God didn't plan evil for your life. He doesn't do that. Does he allow things to happen to us? Absolutely. But the plan that he has and what he's trying to accomplish, that aspect of what he's trying to accomplish in us is going according to plan. It is going according to plan. Now, does he bring in the human factor of free will? Absolutely. That's part of the equation. And, you know, a lot of times we make those decisions to go in the wrong direction, and we stunt our growth and we prevent ourselves from reaching all that we had. But nonetheless, you will be able to see the plan he had for you when he lays it out before you, and you will see whether or not you accomplished it or you came up short, because it's your choice. And so he has a plan. That's why Ephesians says you were created for these good works. The good works were already pre-planned. Not your life, but the good works he intended for you to do has already been pre-planned. That's why he gifted you the way he did, so that you could accomplish that. So it's up to you if you're going to accomplish the whole plan. Maybe you and I get to 80%. Maybe you and I get to 70%. Maybe you and I get to 90%. We want to maximize it, hopefully, but we might fall short based on our own free will and our own decisions. So, but that doesn't mean that what's happening to you is not the plan of God. He's allowing it to shape and mold you and get you to where you need to be. You can even say in your own personal life, some of the tragedies that you have went through have gotten you to a place that you will never have achieved on your own. You just wouldn't have got there. Whether it's wisdom, whether it's understanding, whether it's a different perspective in life, you wouldn't have got there on your own. He had to allow certain things to come in to get you to where you need to be spiritually. So that's a hard one, but that's what he's doing. So the whole point is God's hand is very active on your life. He knows every inch of what's happening to you from the day you were created by him until he takes you home or to the rapture. So, I don't get into this Christian deism that's happening right now. That is a big problem in churches of teaching deism, and that God's really not interested in your life unless you have a major problem, and that's not the case. Anyway, let's go to the next one. Set one's face. You'll see this even in the Gospels about Jesus setting his face to Jerusalem. And the idea of face, we've talked about that a little bit. But what this means is it doesn't mean physically looking in a direction. It means your direction in life, that you set your face at something. You're pointing your compass at a certain direction. And the fact that you have direction, it's not just the fact that you know the direction to go in, it's the fact that you have resolve that you will make it all the way. That's the idea. So when it says that Christ set his face to Jerusalem, he was going all the way to the cross, is the idea. That this is what he's going to accomplish, and he's going to be determined to get it done. So this is a big deal about life. What we find in life, and this is even from a psychological standpoint, that people do better if they have direction in their life, if they have goals. And so whether it's secular or Christian, what they find out from psychology, and this is, the psychology is using this. This is where you get this from. And it's the idea that for someone to have meaning, they have to have short-term goals, and they have to have long-term goals. You will see Paul do the same thing in his letters. You will see Paul write, and if you're picking up on it, he will talk about his short-term goals, and then he'll talk about long-term goals. And he does that with the Corinth church, if I remember right, and a few other ones. And it's funny, he's putting that in there. And if you notice, I mean, he's got to be a type A type of guy, because who thinks like that I'm going to do a short-term goal and long-term goal? So he's very on purpose about what he's doing. But that's how life should be. That's how our lives should be, that you have direction. Look, man, a lot of our young people don't have direction. The reason they don't have direction is they don't have identity. And because they don't have identity, they don't have the directions, they float aimlessly and they don't know what to do. And what's happening, especially with our younger people, is they are floating around all through their 20s. And then they get into their early 30s and they still are floating around and don't know what they need to be doing. And so that's we don't want that, obviously. And adults can get like that as well, older adults. They just don't know what their life's about. Okay, so you find direction in life because by looking at several things. You look at your identity in Christ. You look at your gifting, physical and supernatural. You look at your history, and you look at your pain and trauma. And you bring all that together to give yourself the identity about what you should be doing. And then that sets the course. Okay, so the course then is set, and it's like that's what you need to be doing. But here's the problem. A lot of people know the course, but they're not willing to put the effort into it because it's hard. So they see the course and they don't like it. And they're like, dude, man, that's going to take a lot of work. That's going to take a lot of sacrifice. That's going to take a lot of gutting it out, man. That's a lot of blood, sweat, and tears. So this is the problem. And sometimes in counseling, I can lead a horse to water, but I can't make them drink. And I'll say, well, this is the course that you need to take. This is what I see God doing. And you believe that, yes. Now you have to set your face towards that. And you have to use determination and discipline and everything else to get you there. You have to be, and the biblical term is perseverance. You have to persevere, which means patient endurance. So every day you got to grind it out like Rocky, man. You got to go on your run and you got to do this. And it's part of discipline. The problem is most Christians don't want to be disciplined. They see the direction, but it's going to take sacrifice and discipline. They don't want to do it. And so they back off. And what ends up happening is a lot of Christians sell themselves short and settle for lesser things. Good things, but they're less. And the good things that Satan will always do that to you to distract you from doing the very best. And the good things are good. You know, no one's going to get on to you for doing that. And no one will know other than you and God that you settled to do a good thing. But it's like the tribes of Israel. The tribes of Israel are going into the promised land. And they're going in with Joshua. And then 3 of the tribes decide, we're not going to go in, we're fine. We're not going to go in because it's a lot of fighting, a lot of work. We're fine settling outside the land in the Jordanian area, southern Jordanian area. And Joshua says, no. You guys might want to settle outside the land, but you're going to come in the land and fight with us regardless. So you either, choose your poison. Either you come in the land and fight with us or you're going to fight no matter what, and you can settle outside. But that's what happens to a lot of Christians. They just don't want to go in there and fight. So they settle outside the land, and when you settle, man, it seems easy at first, and you think you're okay, but man, the older you get, the more regret you start having. And that regret just keeps you up at night. You start having nightmares because you're looking in the mirror at yourself, and you're like, I could have accomplished this, but I was too stinking lazy. I could have done this, but I didn't want to make the sacrifice. And it starts plaguing you when you get into your 40s, and then you get into your 50s and 60s, and it just every decade it gets worse and worse about the regret of what you didn't do. That is a horrible way to live. You do not want that. And God doesn't want you doing that. He wants you saying, go for it. Go for exactly what I'm calling you to do and be willing to put in the sweat and blood and tears. And then when you look at yourself in the mirror, you won't have any regrets. You will say, I gave it all. I did everything I possibly could. It's like when we played baseball or played football or anything, when you stepped over that foul line and you got into the playing field, man, it is on. And you leave everything on that field. You don't back off. You go like an animal until you're off that field. And that's how we were trained to play. And we became different when we played. When we put the uniform on, we stepped on between the foul lines, we were different. And that's how you have to be with life. You have to take life very aggressively. This life will beat you up, and it's meant to beat you up. Satan wants to beat you up and keep you down. And you have to learn to fight and go after that. So part of that is you can get direction, but then that discipline and determination has to kick in. It has to. And it's an everyday thing. It's an everyday sacrifice. But here's the thing. It's what gets you out of bed. It's what gets you moving. That's what you're getting up for. And what happens is you have purpose, and that gives you meaning, and that gives you a better health, and that gives you a longer life. Believe it or not. When you have purpose and meaning and you're getting up in the morning and you know what you're about, dude, you're on fire. No one can stop you. It's this aimlessness that's killing people. Our poor kids, they've been hooked on video games from the time they were born, and now they're playing video games. I have people complain to me in counseling that their husbands come home from work, they get on the video games from 6 o'clock to 2 in the morning. And you're like, hey man, what's going on with you, dude? Well, they're not maturing, that's number one, but they have no drive. There's no drive. Where's the drive in it? Look, this is Americana. I mean, we all grew up in Americana. We're fiercely independent. We are fiercely about, making a life for ourselves and doing good and doing so well that I can pass stuff on to my kids. You know what's happening? They're not worried about passing anything on to their kids. In fact, they don't have anything to pass on. Nothing's to pass on. You know why? Because they were floating aimlessly in life. And there is no inheritance for the next generation. And it's like, whoa, what happened here, man? What did you do? You floated because you had no direction. You were just trying to exist and trying to live. So the essence of life is where you get this meaning of setting your face. Ask yourself right now, what is your face set to? What is the direction? What does God want out of you? And are you determined to go after it, right? That's the idea. When God sets his own personal face, he accomplishes it 100% of the time, okay? When God does it. Humans, depends. It depends. It depends on your resolve. It depends on all the other motivations, the motivations of rewards, the motivations of having a fulfilled life, meaningful. It's not going to be easy. Please do understand that. A purpose and meaningful life, when you're setting your face, think about this. What was the Messiah's life when he set his face towards Jerusalem? Where is he heading to? Suffering. He is heading to sacrifice, which is the essence of life. That's the whole paradigm of life, is sacrifice. If you learn how to sacrifice, and look, it's real simple, delayed gratification. I sacrifice now for my future self. That's what it's all about, right? I don't want to betray my future self right now by being lazy and not doing what I need to do. So that's what I want to tell my kids. Hey man, if you're floating around, you're betraying yourself at 35. Because at 35, you want to come back and kick your rear end for what you did. Because you will be so mad and upset about what you did and squandered your 20s, you will want to come back and beat yourself up. Don't be that guy. Don't be that guy. You give it all. And you use that resolve to accomplish it. Okay. So it's unwavering determination, it's perseverance, all that stuff, it's steadfast, and we don't buckle under the pressure, and we're not distracted. Because if you get that singular focus and you're laser beamed on it, Nothing can distract you at that point in time, okay? And it was the idea of Peter walking on the water. Remember that? He started walking on the water as long as he kept his eyes on Jesus, but he got his focus off and he paid attention to the distractions, the wave and the winds, right? And so he got distracted and so he sank. That's the idea. So you have to be laser beamed, not distracted, and you have to be tough enough not to buckle under the pressure. What kind of pressure is going to get put on you? What Satan puts out. He'll throw everything at you. Satan will do everything to discourage you, everything to put the pressure on, okay? He can't kill you, okay? And he can't stop you. You understand that? He can't stop you. But he's a dog on a leash, and he barks. And the problem is people get afraid of the bark, okay? He can do a lot of stuff to you, no doubt about that. He can frighten you, make you afraid. He can discourage you. He can bring people at you to mess you up totally. But he can't stop you. That's what you have to understand. If you will just push through, you will make it. That's how God makes a way for you. But you have to push through. You have to just buckle down and go for it. A lot of Christians don't. It's too hard. I'm hoping that's not you. I'm hoping that's not me. I hope I can persevere to the end. I hope that's the goal for everybody, but that's what it takes. Anyway, next one. According to the wisdom of your God, which is in your hand, which is kind of weird. We understand the wisdom of God, but it's in your hand. What does that mean? Will literally mean as the wisdom of your God that is in your hand. The idiom is in your hand does not mean physical possession, obviously. It means that you have been entrusted with responsibility and a divinely imparted ability to do something. So this goes in line with what we're talking about, right? That God will give you these gifts that you have as a steward of them, and you're responsible for using them. You're responsible for attaining the goal. And this, again, their spiritual gifts are divinely imparted. You got them when you got saved. And your physical gifts that you have developed were divinely imparted as well. And so all of that is made for you. So that when God created you, that's what he did. In the context of this, Artaxerxes tells Ezra to appoint judges according to the wisdom of your God, which is in your hand, basically recognizing Ezra's God-given authority to govern and teach. And so he had that gift. And so that's why Artaxerxes sees the gift in Ezra and allows him to do that. Anyway, I want you to think about what has been entrusted to you, what are your gifts, and who are you responsible for, okay? You cannot just say, I'm responsible for myself. No kidding. Everyone's responsible for themselves. But part of your gifting is to serve others. And you should be able to say, I am responsible for so-and-so, 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 this person, that person, this person, that person, that person, that person. And so the gifting is for others. It's not for you, it's for others. And so you have to think, okay, here's what I've been entrusted with, and who am I responsible for? Now that's important. Because if you can't name who you're responsible for, you're in isolation. You should be able to say, well, I'm responsible for this group or this Bible study or this person, my neighbor or whatever. I'm responsible for them, and I'm using my gifts to minister to them. That's the idea. Ezra, I want you to think about the context of who he's responsible for. He's going to go back and they're going to rebuild Jerusalem. He's thinking to himself, I am responsible for the nation of Israel. I must do this for the nation. I must do this for my people. That's what's motivating him. He's not saying, I'm going to do this so I can be self-actualized as a New Ager. He's not saying that. That's a New Age idea, self-actualization. If it's all about you, you're going to crash and burn. When you get on the ticket, it's about others, and I'm responsible for them, okay, makes total sense. Ezra's doing it for his nation. And again, when Ezra's doing this, it's not from his own, he's so brilliant, it's because God deposited that stuff in him, those giftings in him. And that's how we all are. None of us in here are self-made people. Everything comes from God. Our breath that comes out of our lungs is from God. And so, yeah, but we're responsible for that. That's the idea. So, the idea and the application is whatever God places in our hand, the gifting, okay, you have to exercise that. And look, you could say, I don't have anything. But that's the same thing he said to Moses. What's in your hand, Moses? A rod. Okay, we're going to use the rod. Okay, it's that. David's going to fight Goliath. I told you this last week. What does he have? He has a staff, a sling, and 5 stones. That's it. And you can change the whole world, just whatever's in your hand. So you have to look, what is in my hand? What has God placed in my hand? And that means that whatever you have means you're competent to fulfill the mission God gave you. You are totally competent to do that. And so you have to trust that. And that's where your confidence comes. You can do this because of God. He wants this to happen. He needs you to do this. It's your assignment. Do you know when the angels were created, every angel was created with an assignment. They were supposed to do something. And so when the angels rebelled, the third of the angels along with Satan, they rebelled against their assignments. And so the interesting thing about demons and fallen angels, well, fallen angels particularly, in case studies of exorcisms and deliverance of them, sometimes they will talk to the people that is doing the deliverance or the exorcism, and the exorcist or deliverance guy will say, "What was your assignment before you fell?" And they'll say, whatever. And what you find out is the demon or the fallen angel is doing the opposite of his call. So if he was called to foster people going into the ministry, his now duties will be to discourage people from going into the ministry. If his job was to provide chastity and holiness in sexual matrimony, then his job will be to do sexual perversion in the kingdom of darkness. They do the opposite of what they're called to do when they fall. But what does that tell you? Many of them, or all of them, had an assignment and were gifted specifically as individual creations of God to do specific things. And a third of them rebelled against that. We are no different. We are no different from them. Everybody in this room was created for a unique assignment in this life to do it. And only you can do it. I can't do it. The person sitting next to you can't do it. Only you have this unique gifting. And that's how the angels are. They are unique. Yes, they're angels by category, but do you realize that every angel is a unique creation? And everyone's different. They're all different. They have different looks. Some are bigger, some are smaller, some are smarter, some are more powerful. But it just depends on what their assignment is. And so that's how we are. And a good application in all this is when you're an unbeliever, you will do the opposite of what you were actually called to do. That tends to happen. You do the opposite of what you were called to do. So, it's kind of you never get away from these spiritual realities. They kind of apply across the board. Anyway, the Hebraism, what my God had put into in my heart to do. And this is where we have the concept we find from Nehemiah, and that he had put on Nehemiah's heart to go back and rebuild the walls of Jerusalem. At the time, Ezra and Nehemiah, there's probably already about 54,000 Jews already living in Israel and living among the ruins after the Babylonian exile. But God put it on Nehemiah's heart to go rebuild the walls. Okay. And again, what is the heart? The heart in Hebrew is the center of your being. It's where your belief structure is, where your inner self is. This is where your thoughts, your decisions come from, your emotions, all that stuff, okay? It's in your soul. Anyway, when God puts it on your heart, the center of your being, he puts a conviction there. He implants a burden on there, a desire that you cannot explain naturally. Okay? It would benefit in Nehemiah nothing personally to say, let's go from Babylon all the way back to Israel and rebuild the walls, had that not been implanted by God. That's a God thing. And here's the thing about your assignment. It's implanted on your heart. You know intuitively what you need to be doing if you will discover it. It's there. It's already implanted there. I knew what I was supposed to be doing before I ever did it. I knew it years before I ever surrendered to it. I knew what I needed to do, but I didn't want to do it. I just knew it had been placed there, and I didn't like it. And I'm like, no, no, and no. I'm not doing that. So you'll know it before you even do it. And so God is putting that on you. Now, you can deny it like I did. You can pretend it's not there. Say, no, I have different plans. I want to do this with my life. I want to do that with my life. And you can do that. And if you deny that, you will have the free will to say no to it. Okay? If you deny it, you will be one of the most miserable people on planet Earth if you say no to the call. Whatever that burden is, whatever he placed on your heart. I can't tell you how many guys I have ran into who said no to God about going into the ministry, and now, it's too late for them now, and or whatever for them in their home mindset, and they will literally tell me they didn't want to do it because they couldn't make any money. So they went for the money, and guys, I can tell you this, they live with extreme regret, because they went for the money. And what it shows you is it's not worth it, man. If he's calling you to do something, whether it's to stack pins at the bowling alley, yeah, you're going to make money, but if he puts that on your heart and that's what you do is stack pins at the bowling alley, then you go stack pins at the bowling alley. And you will be fulfilled if that's what your calling is. But you have the right to say no. He doesn't force things on you, but he will put it on your heart. And here's the thing, you will feel it's a burden, and you will feel it doesn't go away. And you say, well, I'll ignore it. And so you can ignore it 6 months. I ignored it for probably 3 years. 3 years, ignoring. But it doesn't go away. It just doesn't go away. It's just right there on your heart, and and here's the thing, it starts getting heavier and heavier and heavier. And that's the only thing I can describe it as. It's a weight. And then at some point you surrender to it and you say, I have to do this. I have no other option. There is no other option to go sell insurance. There is no other option to go do this or go do that or go do that. I have to do this. And that's when it sinks so deep, and that's where you surrender to it. Now, it's not a call to ministry. It could be a call to do whatever in your life. So I don't want you to confuse that as a vocational call to be an ambassador. I'm just giving my own opinion on what it did to me. But for you, it could be something different. It could be, whatever, a job change. It could be this, it could be that, whatever. And that pressure will just keep, it starts becoming like a weight, and it doesn't go away. It just waits there and sinks, and it's just deeper and deeper and deeper in your soul. That's how you know you're called to do whatever you're called to do. That's how you know. Now, it seems subjective, but I'm just trying to tell you what it feels like and what this is. If he puts it on your heart, that's all I can tell you. And it becomes a burden. So Nehemiah then recognizes that he has a mission to go rebuild the walls, and so he does that. It's not self-originated. It is not you thinking, I'm going to go do great things for God. No, good luck on that one, because that ain't going to happen. You try to do great things for God, you will throw yourself off the temple, and he will not rescue you. He puts what he wants you to do on your heart. That's when you know you should do it, and that's how you have faith and the confidence to go out and do it, because you know that's what he's doing. When you say, I've heard pastors, and they're so wrong in doing this, just go out and achieve great things for God. That's crazy. That's insane. That's doing stuff that God has not called you to do, and it's going to flop. It's crazy. I can't believe they even say things like that. But anyway, it's the idea that God's working through you. This is why it's very important to you to know your plan and your purpose. I cannot overemphasize this. Look at Philippians 2:13 says, "For it is God who works in you both to will and to do for his good pleasure." It is God who's working in you to do that. He wants to accomplish that through you. And that's what your rewards are based on. He has all your rewards ready for you of what he had planned for you to accomplish. And I hope you find that. So, that's how you find out if it's truly from God. Now, look, there's a lot of guys in ministry, and I'm just going to tell you right now, just from the ministry standpoint, there's a lot of mama called, papa sent guys in ministry, okay? They're really not called. They felt pressure from mom and dad, dad's a pastor or whatever, and that pressure, I better conform. This is the family business, so I'll just conform and go to seminary. It's like, dude, that guy has no call, he has no gifting. You have to have the gifts. And if you don't have the gifts, how can you say you're going to be a pastor? It's just bad. There's a lot of that going on. And a lot of guys go into the ministry, they feel pressure from other people, feel pressure from that, and they're really not called. And so I tell you this, man, there's a good percentage of guys in ministry that have absolutely no business in ministry. Absolutely none, okay? And it's because it's self-generated. It's a lot of self-generated stuff. It's not God-driven. What you're looking for in your life, when God places the call on you, here's what will happen to you. Your first reaction will be, all right, I'm all in. That's not the right reaction. Because when you find someone like that, I'm all in, that they're not thinking. They're not even thinking. They're not counting the cost. When he puts a burden on you, you're going to like, oh, no. What? And that's the first reaction. That's the first reaction. It's the reaction Moses had. I mean, you're going to talk to Pharaoh. I can't. I'm slow of speech. That's right. Exactly. The reluctant leader. If someone says, I'm all in. No. They're not counting costs and they're crazy. Don't think like that. Okay? So when he calls you, you're going to like, oh man, that's really going to be hard. And there's going to be part of you that, I don't know if I want to do all that. There's a part of you that knows you can do it, that you already are prepared and you have the gifting for it. But there's a part of you that doesn't want to put the work in. Okay? There's going to be, it's that tension you're going to feel. Now, if it's mama called, papa sent, it will die. It will die. If it's a conviction from humans, it won't last. Okay? Unless you're trying to impress somebody, a girlfriend, a wife, a spouse, a dad, a mom, whatever. And the minute they die, then the whole thing's over, right? You have no one, mom and dad are gone, you have no one to impress, and you're like, what am I doing in this job? You know? But that's the thing. That's trying to help you to discern how God works. And anyway, here's the good news. If he calls you to something, he will enable you. Guaranteed, okay? He will give you probably already have the gifts, but here's the thing about the gifts. You might already have the gifts, but you have to develop them. So like with my gift of pastor-teacher, I had to learn how to teach properly. I had to learn how to navigate the scriptures, and I had to learn how to prepare a lesson and how to put it all together. And so, if you would have heard me early on, it was horrible, absolutely horrible. But I was learning how to do it, and it's kind of like an art and science. The more you do the gift, the better you become at the gift, and the more confident you become, and then it becomes natural. And that's what you want to get with your gifting. You want to get to your gifting to where you don't even think about it anymore. That's how far you want to develop your gifts. Like it just comes natural. And the best way I can picture it, it's like hitting a home run. If you've ever hit a home run, you actually can't feel the home run when you make contact because it hits the sweet spot of the bat, you hit the right part of the ball, and you actually don't feel it. It's like a weird feeling. And you know you've connected. When you have developed your gifts to maturity, That's how the giftings will feel with you. It's like second nature. You can do it with your eyes closed, if that makes sense. Not early on, but later in the game. That's the idea. And so whatever gifting you have, that's where you still have to develop that. Whether it's evangelism, whether that's administration, whether that's encouragement, or whatever that might be. Maybe you have the gift of helps, but you still have to learn that about that gift and how it works. You have to be able to see when people need help and discern that. Discernment is another gift that people have, and the ability to read people. Well, you just don't have the ability to read instantaneously. You have some of it, but it's embryonic and you have to develop it. But man, if you've been developing it for 30 years, wow, someone that has a gift of discernment can spot things like no tomorrow, man. It's all over. They can spot it because they're really adept at it. And that's how you want to get. You want to get to that point. Now, here's the thing. It doesn't end when you die. Your gifting that you're developing is for the next life. It's for eternity. Because the way you're gifted now is how God wants to use you in eternity. So this right now is practice, actually, for the kingdom age and then for eternity. So nothing is going to be left behind as far as what you have developed. It goes on. It moves on. And so a lot of the things you're learning right now about your life will be used in the next. And so, wow. So God doesn't waste anything? Absolutely not. He doesn't waste anything. So what I'm trying to get across to you is there's a continuation of your life and your skills and all that you're developing that continues to go on. So don't think it just stops when you die or then when you retire. Okay, all my gifts stop and I'm done. Or the rapture happens and I'm done. That's not when it stops. You're going to get rewarded for what you did here, but they go on. They go on to be more developed. And who knows, we might get more giftings in the Messianic kingdom or in eternity or something like that. It might go on. But anyway, a lot can be said about that. Anyway, any questions on that stuff? I know it's a lot. A lot of them actually dovetailed into our callings. So there's a couple questions here.
So, Pastor Brandon, you said that the fallen angels, their job in heaven was to encourage the ministry. And
not all of them. Some. I just get one.
It's like a generalization.
The what now?
It's like a generalization. So
I've given an example of one case study where one of the fallen angels' jobs before he fell was to encourage people to go into the ministry.
Okay, but prior to the fall of man, I'm confused. What ministry would they have been going into in a perfect world?
Yeah, well, here's the thing. Angels had all knowledge. That's why there's no savior for them. They were given full knowledge when they sinned. So they knew the full plan of God. Okay. So that's different. They knew God was going to create us. And that's one of the reasons they rebelled. But they all had an assignment, whether that assignment was with Israel or they knew about anything. They had the full plan. Now, they didn't have all the plan, but they knew that God was going to use humans, and he was going to do what he did with us, and that's part of the problem. So angels sinned in full knowledge of the plan. That's what made the rebellion that much worse, and that's why there is no redemption. We sinned, and we didn't know anything, hardly. We're clueless. God didn't come to us and say, guys, here's all the plan. Now make your decision. He didn't do that. We have very limited knowledge, and that's why you can see why our redemption is different through the Messiah. Theirs is a whole different ballgame. They're in the presence of God. He says, "This is the plan we're going to do. Are you on board?" And a third of them said, "No, we are not going to do that." So, some of their assignments, what do good angels do? Their assignments is to us. Doesn't the writer of Hebrews says they are ministering spirits that minister to us? So they are assigned to us. Every person has at least 2 guardian angels assigned to them. And those guardian angels are meant to encourage us to do certain things in our lives. Now, that's what I said. In one case study, one fallen angel admitted that his job was to encourage men to go into the ministry. But now he does the opposite. He discourages men to go into the ministry. So they will always do the opposite. They all had time. Well, another case study, some angels were given the assignment to be in the heavens at the birth of the Messiah. They rejected that. So guess what they do? Oppose everything that does with Christmas.
Okay, one more question. This is a little bit off topic, but this day and age, do you believe that Satan gloats when he gets us to sin?
Oh, yeah.
To God, like in conversation form.
That he gloats before God? Or
Mm-hmm.
Oh, absolutely. That's why he's accusing us day and night before God, especially if we go unconfessed. And that's what the issue is. And so he's asking God to pound us and wants us to pound, and knows God will do it if we don't confess and repent. And so that's exactly that. So he can't take us to hell, but he can destroy us. And just like with Balaam, how are you going to destroy believers? Well, you destroy them by bringing in the judgment of God on them. And so that's the thing. Unbelievers, totally different story. He wants to kill all of us, no doubt about that. But he works to not only take them to hell with him, but to destroy them physically. And if he could destroy us physically, he would do it too. But we're off limits physically to him. He can't touch us physically, according to Hebrews chapter 2. But yeah, gloating, yes, totally. He hates us, absolutely. They hate us, the fallen. They absolutely despise us. They hate us to the very core of their being, because we're going to be given almost everything Satan wanted.
Could you, this is off topic too, could you explain to me, I was unclear last time you mentioned this, that evil keeps growing, and even in hell, evil can grow. So I don't know if they have things they can do in hell like we have things to do in heaven or not, but why would God allow evil to grow after he's already judged them? Why would he allow it to grow for eternity?
Well, first of all, he's honoring them. Believe it or not, hell is an honoring of them because he's honoring their free will. So that's the first thing you have to understand. It's an act of love, actually, to God to not even just extinguish them out of existence. The fact that he lets them continue to live, but the problem is if they have a sin nature and they're with the demons, then they're not going to get better because they get worse just by the nature of sin. The nature of sin never gets lessened, it gets worse. Okay, so then what are you going to do with these creatures that you have created and you're not going to annihilate, because he never annihilates his creation, so he quarantines them. It doesn't empower them, no. They're actually in a ruinated state. So what the idea you want to think about, the Greek word is the idea of dropping a light bulb, and that light bulb is breaking on the ground and it's in a ruinated state. That's the state they're in hell. And the problem with it is the more you're with your sin nature and you have no redeeming quality in you, and you've been removed from the common grace of God. Like right now, pagans live in the common grace of God. The rain falls on the just and the unjust. The sunshine is here, and they benefit from God's goodness even though they don't like him. What happens to them when they're completely removed from his goodness, isolated, and they're with only their sin nature? There's no redeeming quality. There's no grace. The sin nature continues to get worse. As today, the perfect example is someone continues to go unsaved, they do get worse the older they live. That's just the nature of sin. It never gets better. It only gets worse. So he doesn't stop that. He just allows it, but they're quarantined. So that's what you have to, you start with the nature of sin. What does it do? It metastasizes. Sin is a cancer. That's why it is likened to leaven being put in a loaf. So what's the point there? It doesn't stay there. It goes through and permeates the entire loaf. It's that idea. That's the nature of sin. So when someone has a disposition like that, that's what it does. it will continue to corrupt them and corrupt them and corrupt them and corrupt them. It's awful. Hell and lake of fire, this is why God warns about it, is awful. Absolutely the worst. But it's an honoring of their free will. It's giving them exactly what they want. And that's the sad part about it, right? Yeah, go right over here.
Can Satan use unbelievers to attack believers?
Totally. He does it all the time, man. And in fact, that's his best strategy, is to use useful idiots like unbelievers to come against us. And so it could be in your own family, it could be friends, it could be some punk out there or whatever. But what Satan does is he uses unsuspecting people because they're part of his kingdom no matter what. They don't even know. And he will use them, and sometimes he will instigate and put things in their head to say to you or do to you to incite you. And what does Satan want to do? He wants to draw you into you sinning. So I'll use this person to incite you and inflame you, whether verbally or physically or something, and to take you down. And that's a pattern like, no tomorrow. And he also will use the opposite sex. Typically, it's the opposite sex.
So my question is this sort of about understanding, okay, this is my gifting, these are my talents, and so on and so forth. When it comes to taking the spiritual gifts testing as far as answering all those questions, how reliable would you say is that test? And outside of that, is there what other methods would you recommend for understanding that this is what I'm called to do?
Sure. So the testing is just a starting ground, but then here's where the real proving ground is. So that's the starting ground. But the proving ground is you got to go out and do it. So here's the thing. If you say, okay, it's telling me I have the gift of teaching, I better go out and try to do it. But where would I start? I'm not going to start in front of adults. I'm going to start teaching children. Maybe I'll work myself up to youth, get used to that. If I'm good there, then I'll try the next set with adults, see how good I'm there, and we move on. And so you have to start small, and then you grow from there. So you have to just do it. You have to get out there and do it.
Okay, and just one more question. Can that also apply to, let's say, a secular job?
Yeah, absolutely. Because God might call you to be a butcher, baker, candlestick maker, and that is your call. It's not a call to like being a pastor, but you might be called to sell insurance. You might be called to be a used car salesman. You might be called to sell surfboards. I don't know. But whatever he calls you to do, that's your mission field, and he's going to use that to expand the kingdom through you in that area. And so what you have to understand is you don't want to have what we call a secular sacred dichotomy. And what do I mean by that is, well, anytime I'm at church, that's my sacred, and then when I'm away from church, that's secular. Oh, no. Everything is sacred. Your whole life is sacred. You don't have to work at the church to have a sacred calling. You can, like I say, you can be, work at Steve's Candy making candies. If that is what he called you to do, then go do it with all your might and be the best candy maker you could possibly be, if he's called you to do that. But that's the thing, is you got to make sure that's what you're called to do. If you are called, you will be right in your groove. And how do you find that out? Well, if you were called to be a candy maker, maybe start making candy and see what happens. I don't know. See how good you are at making candy. I don't know. If you're a total flop and you say, well, I'm called to be a chef and you can't put anything together, then maybe you need to readjust that something, right? Or learn. Okay, great, yeah.
Yeah. So based on the claim that you said that, is it safe to assume that you'll most likely do the spiritual gift that you were doing from, like, say, like an example, like you were, teaching, or like your job now, you're assuming that you'll do that in heaven, or that will be your spiritual gift. My question is, if you have multiple spiritual gifts, we're safe to assume that we'll entertain that spiritual gift like in heaven?
Totally. And it could be expanded. and be a little bit different. So I think about, okay, so if I got the gift of teaching, I'm pretty sure I'm going to be teaching in the Messianic kingdom. And who am I going to be teaching? It's not going to be you. I'm going to be teaching mortals that made it through the tribulation. That would be one of my jobs. I would assume, because that's all my whole life has been. So he's not going to waste that. So again, everything is a little bit different, but it might be modified, but it's still going to be at the same root of what you're called to do.
Yeah. Like, because you put it into practice, therefore you most likely will play that part in heaven as well.
That's right. Okay. So everything's practice here. So what you're learning right now is practice for the next life. And of course, you're going to get rewarded here. So it's not just practice. There's a big rewards to it, and that reward gets you positions.
It just made me think, if you have the spiritual gift, or you would use one of the spiritual gifts that God's given you, like worship, would you be safe to assume that you'll be worshiping in heaven as well? Or he might be bringing... or leading worship in the Messianic kingdom, or teaching people how to worship. Because worship, what is worship? It's not just singing. Worship is obedience. That's the idea of worship. So you would probably be showing people how to be obedient. Now, we do know that, they're singing in heaven, and we see that in the book of Revelation and whatnot. And so music is always going to be a part of the dynamic, always. And there's worship that goes on. And so that's a big part of it. So how that's expanded, a lot of times I don't know, but it's definitely going to be a gift that's going to be used, because worship is forever.